What's up, Schwartz Force? Welcome back to the channel. Now this year I'm really trying to find some lesser known brands out there to shed some light on, and when I saw this one, it definitely caught my eye. And being that I've never really gone for a chunky watch before, I felt, alright, it's time, I'm ready, let's give it a try. So in today's episode, if you are into G-Shocks and Rolex, well, this watch is going to give you a bit of both. You'll see what I mean. Check this out. Let's jump right into it, guys. This is the Enriva Deep Dive Watch, reference number ESB697RBU. And before we get into the watch, I have to take a moment and comment on how awesome this packaging is that it arrived in. It's like a miniature Blancpain case kind of, with the pelican design style to it, double latch, water seal along the edge, and custom foam insert. The watch comes on a silicone rubber strap, as well as the steel bracelet, which we'll get into soon, and also has the user manual, as you can see here, an extra set of spring bars, a cleaning cloth, and this really nice aluminum spring bar tool. This is definitely nicer than some of those other cheaper spring bar tools you get with other watches, so for first impressions, I was pleasantly surprised to see this kind of quality right off the bat. Now, first glance at the watch, you can see some inspiration drawn from the Rolex Sea Dweller, notably the James Cameron Deep Sea version, but it's not a direct homage, and that's what I like. Rather than having a blue horizontal gradient dial like the Rolex, this Enriva watch uses a circular gradient dial, giving it that fumé effect from the black edges that transition into this deep, rich admiral blue center. This combination of blue dial and black PVD steel case really caught my eye, but they do have a black case with a black dial option, as well as a steel case with black dial and steel case with blue dial versions available. So there's a little bit of something for everyone. The specs are as follows for this big boy. Case diameter of 44mm, 49.5 with the crown, lug to lug height of 53.6mm, a case thickness with the flat sapphire crystal is putting it right at 19mm, and there's a lug width of 22mm. Now you know why I mentioned in the title about G-Shocks, because this thing is right up there with some of the thicker G-Shocks available, like the Mudmaster coming in at 19.3mm. And yes, it weighs just as much as you would imagine. With the silicone strap, it's coming in at 195 grams. With the bracelet sized to my 7 1/4 inch wrist, it totals 290 grams. So you feel this watch on the wrist. And there is a trick to wearing this watch that I'll get to, because I personally was worried that it would just be astonishingly big on my wrist, but stick around to the end because you'll see how I managed to rock this watch without any confidence issues. Finishing up the specs, we have a 120 click unidirectional bezel in steel with a ceramic insert that is fully lumed. There's a helium escape valve necessary for that 1,000 meters of water resistance rating. There are lumed hands and hour markers, and the watch is powered by the common workhorse we've all come to know and love, the Seiko NH35. Now, I did also notice there is indication of the watch having magnetic resistance and being a certified dive watch, so I actually reached out to the company just to see what details I could find out, and I was advised that the watch is actually tested up to 1,250 meters in their plant and has certification from SGS, but only 1,000 meters is listed on the watch specs. So each watch has been pressure tested to pass at 1,250 meters before being released for purchase. So I thought that was really cool to find out. And in regards to the magnetic resistance, I did also find out that the watch has an integrated metal case structure where the movement is set with an inner cover within the case that is then sealed. Now this kind of reminded me of how my Blancpain 50 Fathoms movement is also shielded with an iron metal case cover for its magnetic resistance. So it seems like this watch is really built like a tank when I received this information from the brand. Now, after spending some time with this watch, what really impressed me is the attention to detail in the finishing and the upgrades included. But nothing is perfect, there's just a couple minor things I wish had been done differently, which we'll get into later. As we go over the watch, keep in mind that this model is priced at just under $400, with some variations fluctuating from $330 to $395 depending on the version you go for, as well as what Amazon discounts are being promoted at a given time. So it's competing with some well-known micro brands and divers out there, so keep that in mind. Now, starting with the bezel, there's a deep coin edge that has just the right sharpness to it. It's not rough to the touch, and it's not so smooth that it slips. It's right in that Goldilocks kind of feeling. It turns smoothly with a great sounding bezel action. There's just a tad bit of back play, and it lines up really nicely. I like that the bezel insert is a matte black finish, and the white colored indices and Arabic numerals give great contrast for readability. These indices and markers are etched into the bezel and then filled with a lume, and I'm really impressed with how crisp the edges are and how the 12 o'clock lume pip is perfectly applied and has a stainless steel edging that protects it from getting bumped off. Unlike some cheaper homages out there that I've seen, they actually did this really well. Now the case shape is your typical shape similar to that of the Rolex models, but in all brushed black PVD stainless steel. The lug tips are rounded off and all the edging is nice and smooth. There's no unfinished edges on this watch, or sharp edges. And we see the helium escape valve done in high polish on the side of the case, and opposite from that we have the screw down crown with crown guards. The crown is in high polish as well. It's signed with the Enriva logo and has a coin edge finishing. Looking at the back of the case, we see there is a stainless steel screw down case back that they have engraved into it what looks like an image of me after eating Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner this past year. Okay, obviously I'm just kidding. It's an image of an old school vintage deep diving suit that's done really well in detail, and along the case back we see typical branding and indication that this is part of a limited edition of 100 watches produced. From the side, you can see how the case back protrudes almost 5 millimeters below the case. Moving to the dial, we see the sharp arrow-shaped hour hand in high polished steel, plunger-shaped minute hand in high gloss orange, which gives it an Omega Ploprof or ocean crawler vibe I really like. The seconds hand is a Rolex style needle shape with lollipop and orange needle tip, and the seconds hand reaches all the way out to the chapter ring, which is where we see the painted white stick minute markers and applied lume markers at each hour in circular and rounded wedge shapes set into bead blasted steel. There is an applied branding logo at 12 o'clock that also has a bead blasted finish with printed branding as well. Then we see specification details printed just above 6 o'clock. There is a date wheel at 3 o'clock, which is enhanced by the 2.5 times Cyclops magnifier that has been applied to the flat sapphire crystal. Printing on the date wheel is clear to the naked eye, but when we get up close, we see that it could be a bit more crisp on the edging. Overall legibility of this dial is very good to me, thanks to those pops of color and finishing. The watch is powered by the Seiko NH35 movement, which we've seen in a lot of reviews, so if you're new to this particular movement, it's a reliable, highly regarded automatic movement and allows for hand winding, hacking of the seconds hand, and has quick set date change and beats at 3 Hz, or 21,600 vibrations per hour. Now this particular movement has an amplitude hovering around 228, there's 0.2 beat error, and overall average accuracy of -3 to -6 seconds per day, which in my experience with a lot of the Seiko NH35s, this is pretty good. I've seen some as high as like 15, almost 30 seconds a day, so I was really pleased with that. Now the lume looks great, fully charged, and as you can see, the logo on the dial is also lumed, which I think is a really cool touch that the brand decided to put that little extra pop of lume in there. It's really easy to read when it's fully charged, and I timed the lume on this watch to last about an hour and a half before it became dim enough to where reading the time was becoming a little bit difficult in complete darkness. Finishing up with the strap options, the silicone strap comes on a black PVD coated steel tang buckle to match the watch case, and it is soft, pliable, and really lets you get that tighter fit while still having just a tad bit of give and flex to it. The bracelet is also black PVD coated steel and features a 3-link oyster style design that tapers from 22mm down to 20mm with solid links, solid end links, and a milled deployant clasp with safety latch. Probably the biggest surprise to see on this watch is that this bracelet also features quick release end links. These really make strap swaps a breeze, and the fact that we don't even see this on common higher tier brands, to see it on micro brands like this is really refreshing and should be a wake up call to pretty much all luxury brands out there. The links are held in with a pin and collar system, so adjusting it is, yes, a bit of pain initially, but once you get it dialed in, you have 4 micro adjustment spots on the clasp as well. So one thing I did want to point out is that while the edges and sides of the bracelet are PVD coated nicely, in between the links they are unfinished, also behind the clasp. This isn't something I notice when I'm wearing the watch, but I did see it when adjusting the strap, so I think it's an area that could be improved upon in future versions. Here is how the watch looks on my 7¼ inch wrist with the silicone strap. And here you can see how the watch wears with the bracelet. Now I promised that I would show you how I wear this chunky piece without any confidence issues, and this is the trick. By wearing it slightly higher up on my wrist and also making it a bit more snug than what I usually wear my watches, it prevents any wobble on the wrist and also solves the issue of that larger gap from being so obvious versus if I were to wear it lower on my wrist. Also, I noticed a bit of digging into the back of my hand from the crown if I wear the watch too loose. So pros for this watch are the style and color combo. I think they did really well with the options available, and this one was the right one for me. Finishing on the printings, the etching, the bezel, the case, and crown is all done at a level that I would expect to see at a price point much higher. I was really impressed with that. The specs are all there, with the added bonus of that magnetic resistance protection, so as far as a dive and tool watch, this thing is built like a tank. It's definitely chunky, which I think is a pro for the types of guys that are going to lean towards something like this watch. There are Casio G-Shocks that are up to 20mm thick, so I don't think that this is the deal breaker or a real issue, and since it has that Rolex aesthetic to it, this is the perfect blend if you love the Sea Dweller and want something that looks a bit more tactical and rugged with that black PVD case option. So what are the cons, or what would I change? Well, I wish this watch had come on an FKM rubber strap instead of the silicone version, as FKM does better with keeping dust and pet hair from sticking to it. Also, since the bracelet has quick release spring bars, it would have been nice to see quick release spring bars on the rubber strap as well. The unfinished edges on the bracelet links could use a bit more attention, and lastly, would be just the overall thickness. Even if the watch was just 2 or 3mm thinner, that could help with wearability on the wrist, especially for guys with wrists that are just large enough to pull this watch off. I'm really glad I came across this brand so that I could show it off to you guys and gals. And for dudes that like chunky and massive watches that have that standout wrist presence, or for fellas out there that have larger wrists and need something larger to give the right proportions and appearance, this one I would highly recommend you check out. Let me know what your thoughts are on this watch, and for those of you who stuck around to the end, let me just take a quick moment and say, you guys rock. I hope to see you all at the next one as well. And as always, may the Schwartz be with you. Take care.